Hey Danielle, I'm so grateful that you are here today. We're just going to have a fun time talking about everything that you've built, created, accomplished, and written. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this for so long. So it's exciting to finally be here.
Yeah, this is awesome. We've been in the same spaces for a couple of years now, and it's fun to just see the evolution of where people go. These small little things that we do that then grow into something so much bigger. So I know you have a book coming out in a couple of months, an incredible conference in a couple of months. You're just doing some amazing, amazing things. So I'd love to just start with a little bit about you and share what you're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you. I was just reflecting back over the weekend how we first met and like how far we've come. It was at an event that someone that we both know hosted. And at the time I had cancer and I was a wreck, like a complete mess. We're talking like this is early 2019, I think
Yeah,
it
I
was
think so.
somewhere around there. And now like look at where we are. It's so different. And for me, for anybody who's never been introduced to me, been a part of my world before, I'm a licensed psychotherapist turned full-time shadow worker, best-selling author, and I'm a conference host. So I host this huge annual conference every year in Philadelphia called Selfish Philly that's all based around self-care and wellness. And on the side, I'm a CEO for a holistic wellness center that kind of takes over the virtual space, anything and everything you can think of, virtual healing. So that's me. And I can't believe that that's who I am now, based on where I was then, you know?
Absolutely. And a lot of people who listen to the show are at the beginning stages of their business. Maybe they're still working full time and they're about to transition, or they might be stepping into the coaching wellness space. And I think your story is very inspiring because started as a psychotherapist, then went to be an author, then moved into shadow work, coaching, um, opening up your own wellness collective in Philadelphia. Like, I'm just so impressed by that journey, and I know there's so much more coming for you. So let's kind of dive into that journey a little bit. When did you choose to kind of move away from the space of being just the psychotherapist?
Yeah, I think for me, this process has not been linear at all. So it was always something that was in the back of my mind. I would do therapy and I loved my clients so much and I resonated with their stories and I wanted to help them in the most aligned, heartfelt way possible. But I never felt like we got to the root of anything. And that was really frustrating. I'm very much a fixer, and therapy is not about fixing. It's about helping reflect back ideas to help you discover your potential, which is lovely and powerful in its own way. But I knew that there was more that I wanted and I couldn't get to it. So when I was diagnosed with cancer in late 2018, I had to go on my own journey. I had a therapist at the time who was wonderful and helped me process a lot of the things that were going on, but it wasn't deep enough. And I spiraled out of control. I fell into a very deep depression. I was a wreck. And that was when I found shadow work. And through the process of using shadow work, I was able to claw my way back, not only to normal, but beyond normal, like so much more than I ever thought that I could be. So when I was working with that woman, Alison Kelsey, in the UK, she was phenomenal. That was when I really realized this is what I want. It's not the therapy. This is what I've been looking for this entire time. And it was like the light bulb went off, the fireworks were going, like everything switched. And I knew that I couldn't live the way that I was living anymore. I had to make the jump, and I did.
Yeah, and I love when we look backwards at the journey. It's like, of course, you were a psychotherapist. You were planting these seeds of helping people, supporting people, helping them reflect things back. And then you find this thing called shadow work and you see how beautifully it can integrate into the work that you're already doing. Like, it always makes sense in reverse.
Yes. And as you're going through it, nothing makes sense. And you're like just kind of going blindfolded, hoping it works out. But when you look backwards, it does. Everything makes sense. And I'm so glad I went on the route that I did because all that background, that training, the neuroscience work that I did in my undergrad, it all applies now. And it didn't then necessarily, but it all does now. So we sometimes we just have to trust that exactly where we are is where we're meant to be.
Oh, yes. Isn't that the greatest lesson? Because it's such a dance, right? You're like, I know that everything is working out for the greatest good, yet where I'm feeling pulled doesn't actually make any logical sense.
None, none at all. And yet it works.
It really, really does. It really does. So let's dive a little bit into what is shadow work for the person who maybe's heard this term thrown around. Like, what is it in your opinion and perspective?
Yeah. So shadow work is the process of going into the unconscious mind. It was originally coined by Carl Jung in 1863. The shadow, in his opinion, was that unconscious mind space, which is the deepest level that our brain can hold on to. Our brains have three levels of consciousness. There's the conscious, which is the stuff that we're fully aware of, like you're listening to this podcast right now. There's the subconscious. So if you're listening to this podcast and doing something else at the same time, like driving or washing the dishes or going for a walk with your dog. The subconscious is the stuff that keeps your body moving and keeps things moving forward, but you don't actually need to pay attention to it. You don't realize you're blinking, but you are. So the subconscious mind controls a lot of our behaviors. It controls a lot of our automatic thoughts. And that space is deep, but not as deep as what's below it, which is the unconscious. The unconscious, or the shadow, is everything that your brain is hiding from you. It does this for a variety of reasons. One, it's just a lot for your brain to hold on to if we were to keep everything in the conscious mind. So some stuff has to fall down into that unconscious space. Two, some of it is very heavy. So if you were constantly thinking about it, you would probably be depressed or even suicidal because it's just too much for one person to hold. And three, it holds that stuff down there because you need to learn a lesson. That's my belief, at least. And when we tap into that unconscious mind through shadow work, we learn a lot of lessons. You learn about who you are, why you're here, what behaviors you're doing that make you who you are, that you can actually shift pretty easily when you understand how to tap into that unconscious mind through shadow work. You learn about how to shift your personality. So if you're someone who's very introverted, like I've always been, you can become extroverted pretty easily and do things like show up on a stage in front of thousands of people and have conversations with them just like you would if you were in a one-to-one setting. Something you think you could never do is not actually built in the fabric of who you are. It's just stuff that's in your unconscious mind. With shadow work, what we want to do is go into that unconscious space and change how those memories are stored in the brain. And when we do that, it changes how they're stored in the body, your emotions, and your energy. And that is shadow work.
That was the best. I mean, of course, it was the best description.
I just wrote a whole book on the topic, so I've had a lot of time to really get that definition down.
It was spot on. I can tell that all of your hard work really paid off.
Thank you. Shameless pitch for the book. If you want more information on it, the book is coming out September.
Amazing. Yeah, we have to do a plug for that. Absolutely. Now, when it comes to starting a business, growing a business, launching things in our business, being seen in the business, right? Talking on a stage, writing a book, these things tend to bring up a lot of different emotions. And it sounds like it's not just from the conscious mind, but most likely the subconscious and unconscious. So for
Mhm.
you, what was that process like of growing a business, a brand, having a large conference, one of the biggest ones in the Northeast, and now about to publish a book? Like, what came up for you during that journey?
Oh, everything. Like every bit of the worst pieces of myself have showed themselves to me in the past few years. And I love it now. It's like totally different than before where I was afraid. And I think that's the biggest piece is when you learn to go into those dark spaces, you fall in love with them and you fall in love with those pieces of you because you've become this person that you are today because of who you were before. When you go into that shadow space, when you're doing something like planning on speaking in front of a large crowd. Here's an example. Last year, this time, I spoke at Philadelphia's City Hall in front of thousands of people for their Wawa 4th of July festival thing right after Dr. Oz. So, like, no pressure. And I was dying inside a little bit. And in those moments, your brain, your body, you go back to these pieces of you that are terrified. Like, I remembered being in kindergarten and not paying attention to what the teacher was saying. And she asked people to raise their hand for something, and I was not paying attention. So I thought I was supposed to. And I did. And I got yelled at for not paying attention because I obviously was not supposed to raise my hand in that moment. And it makes you feel things. So in that moment, I felt ashamed. I felt worthless. I felt stupid. And those moments create these neural pathways in the brain, and they tell our bodies to respond in specific ways when we're in pressure situations. So, those are the kind of things that come up when you have these experiences. The difference, having done shadow work now versus before, is when those things come up, I understand them and I can change how they exist in my body. I don't need to feel afraid. Whereas before, I might have just felt the fear, not understood the origin, and gone, you know what? I'm not going to take that opportunity because that's just a little too high level for me. I'm not there yet. I'm building. I would have let it pass by. Or maybe something about me would have told the universe, like, don't even offer her that. She's not ready for that yet. So it's important when we want to make a big transition, when we want to grab that success, whatever it looks like, because success is whatever you want it to be. You have to be willing to look at those dark parts of yourself and own them and fall in love with them all over again. That was a huge piece of everything that I've ever done for my business, whether it was opening the Holistic Healing Center, the Wellness Collective, or accepting the book being published by a major publisher. These are things that scare the shit out of me, and I meet them with love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what this really reminds me of is being able to navigate and traverse the emotional states that we get the opportunity to feel being a human on this planet. And you're teaching people how to navigate with just a little bit more ease, grace, and understanding of what's lying beneath that emotion that we feel.
Yeah, that's pretty spot on. And we are meant to feel those emotions. I think there's a misconception that if you have it together, quote unquote, that you don't feel those highs and lows. And that is absolute bullshit. We
Yep.
feel those highs and lows. Everybody does. And you just need to know how to ride out those emotional waves and bring yourself back to center, back to love, back to grace whenever you can.
Yeah, this, like, you're speaking my language because this is why I wanted to have this show. I wanted to feature incredible women doing incredible things, but who were also so human. And like, we're feeling every single part of the journey. And, sometimes talking about how they were probably crying before they had this major aha in their business or sometime in their journey. Like, it's all welcome here. And it's an illusion that this is not part of the process of growth and business, honestly.
Oh, absolutely not. I cry all the time. I think we're meant to. That's why we're here.
Absolutely. What do you think? I'm such a visionary. So, what do you think the world would look like if more leaders and business owners had a deeper understanding of this shadow self? And maybe you've already reflected on this in the book, but what would the world look like?
So I didn't put this in the book, but I have thought about this extensively because when I see people, and I try not to do this too often, but sometimes I start to think as they speak in certain ways, they reveal these little pieces of their shadow and you can see their wounds. And it's like they're right there and they're not going for it. They're not looking to fix it per se. And very often they'll project it onto other people. So if we had more people in charge who really had that ability to go inwards and to go, okay, this is nothing to do with anybody else in the room but me. I'm triggered because of something I've gone through, not because of what something that someone else did has done to me. So if I can go inwards and figure out why I feel the way that I do, things would shift massively. I don't think that we'd have war. I don't think that we'd have the politics game the way that we do, especially with everything going on right now with Roe v. Wade and the domino effect that's about to hit us from that decision. Because really, this is part of an elaborate chess game. That is the first pawn that's been moved. And now everything's going to move because of that. It's unfortunate that very often the people who are in power are the people who are most wounded because they, in their own pain points, can show you that your pain points are okay. And people mistake that for a connection when really it's a trauma bond. So this is a deep topic, like
Yeah,
super, super deep.
yeah, but it's really, really well said. I even think about from, just like a team perspective. I think communication would be different between just teams and levels of leadership because there would be a little bit more understanding for each component. We'd be able to communicate differently. And I do believe that as a world, if we were able to understand our emotions and be able to navigate and ride the waves and surf them, we would be, I think our values would change.
Yeah, I think we'd start looking for the good in people more. Like I just was watching, I get lost in TikTok sometimes when I'm feeling fun. And I was watching this one speaker whom I love talk about the idea that if people who worked at these corporate 9 to 5 jobs started to think instead about their employees instead of about production, how things would shift. So, for example, if one person in the company's productivity was really low this month, and they were not really putting in a lot of hours. They were showing up late. They weren't doing their job. Things were really just not good. Instead of walking into their office and being like, what the hell's wrong? Like, you have 1 week to turn this around and fix it. If instead you go, hey, I noticed your productivity was down. I noticed that you are showing up late and things aren't going well. Are you okay? Is there something that's going on with you? How can I support you through whatever it is that you're going through? Boom, like what a shift. And
Hmm.
then you feel seen, you feel heard. You're going to want to actually show up to work and be a part of this, like this team. But we don't really get to feel that very often. We are, as Americans in particular, because I see this more here than in other cultures, but as Americans, so individualistic that it's all about the productivity, it's all about the bottom line, it's about the dollar. And that never makes anyone feel good.
Yeah. As humans, we just want to be loved, heard, appreciated, respected. Like it's the most simple, simple things, and that's across everything. But when we're not allowing ourselves to communicate maybe in the truest ways because of societal standards and norms and it not being okay to express your emotions and what you're truly navigating, it leads to a domino effect of and it ripples into every industry, every team, every space. And I feel like what you're doing is also just shining light on a different way, a new way, and not even a new way, something that's always been there. We just haven't acknowledged.
Probably something that we did before, and then it shifted into that very masculine, wounded masculine, really space. So
Yeah,
we need to find our way back.
yeah, I love it. So, Danielle, I'd love to hear about who you are also beyond your business. How do you spend your time? What does your life actually look like?
I love this question because no one ever asked me it. And if you ask the people around me, like I'm mom. When outside of my job, like I'm just a normal mom. I drop my kids off at school or at camp today because this is summertime in the morning. I spend my time reading them books and playing games and getting frustrated about them dropping stuff because that's a normal human emotion that people feel. I really spend a lot of my time doing these really kind of mom centric things. And it's such a big part of my identity and something that I don't share very often in the social media space because I want to respect my kids and their boundaries and their safety. They never asked for any of the things that I have or what I do. And I am a very public person online. People get to see very intimate sides of me. I talk about being sexually abused. I talk about my relationship struggles. I talk about my internal struggles and a lot of my shadows. And they didn't ask for any of that. So that's a huge piece of my life that kind of gets tucked away and hidden. And it's just for me, which is nice in a lot of ways. But when they're off and they're at school or at camp or wherever they're going, I spend so much of my time focusing on innovating. I always want to create. I love being someone who has something new to bring to the table all the time, which is why I have so many different aspects to my business, a true manifesting generator. And then when I'm not doing that, I'm really dropping into healing. I love healing. And I think it's something that never has an end. It's always ongoing. So I do Kundalini yoga and I meditate and I do my shadow work and I journal and I love being in all these different spaces. And even though these pieces of me are so different, like the CEO who shows up and it's like, go, go, go. And I like that part of me. And I don't think hustle is necessarily a bad thing as long as it's matched with rest. And then there's a piece of me that loves to dive into the healing and really just live in that soft space. And then mom, where I get to just be a human for a little while. That feels good too. I love having these different pieces of me and getting to be so many versions of myself unapologetically.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this. I do think it's so amazing that I don't know if it's the times that we're in, but we get to be all of all of ourselves. We get to be all of those different faces. You get to be the hustle with the rest. I love that. That was good, by the way.
Thank
You get to be
you.
the mom, you get to be the healer, you get to be the one reading and just absorbing information. We get to be it all. We're not these boxed in individuals that only have one title and that's the end all be all.
No, definitely not. And I think something we've been preached to before is like you have to just embody everything that you are. And it's like this one dimensional with layers underneath it. But I feel like I'm six different people at all times. And I like that. I really like being able to tap into these different aspects of myself. And maybe that's the Carl Jung aspect of me, because he talked about how we have these different pieces of our lives, like the persona, the anima, the shadow. Maybe I'm a little too Jungian on that front, but I do think that that is how I work best. And I love all those aspects of who I am.
It's so funny. I just try this on for size. Instead of I'll be interviewed and instead of leading with the, typical credit line, I'm like, I'm a dog mom, I'm a wife, and I'm a gardener. And
Hell
sometimes I do
yeah.
business.
I love that. That's so human, you know? And I think we need to realize that you don't have to be some special shining star that was dropped here to grow into this famous person or someone who makes this massive impact. You get to be the dog mom who's a gardener, who does like knitting on the side. Like you can be whatever the fuck you want and still have massive impact and still be someone who changes people's lives.
Yep. Yep. Yes, yes, yes. So what is next for you with the book, with the Wellness Collective, with everything that you are growing and creating?
So right now, my schedule with the number of things that I have going on and the number of people on my team, because I have roughly about 40 people on my support team. So there's always a plan. Everything's always kind of like clicked into place. So for the next few months, we're gearing up for Selfish Philly, which is really exciting. That holistic conference that I hold every year in Philadelphia, which this year's going to be on October 2nd. We're getting all the pieces into place so that on the day of, it's just the most magical experience. While at the same time, my book team and I are meeting to figure out how to make sure that we get this book into as many hands as possible, because right now this work is so needed. And within the book, it's really about understanding the process of shadow work and applying it. Like you should learn in this book exactly how to do shadow work for yourself so that you can start becoming that person that you want to be. So if you're listening to this podcast and you want to be that high powered coach, or you want to be the next best-selling author, the answer's in the book. And it's going to give you all the practices that you need to start becoming her or him or them or whatever it is that feels most powerful to you. So we have a virtual book party coming up the day that it launches on September 20th. So I'm getting all the details of that kind of hammered down. And then there's going to be an in-person book party a week later in Philly, which is super exciting. I love in-person stuff. I am at my core someone who really loves being able to like touch people and feel their energy and be in that space with them. So it's going to be fun to have that in-person day. And then I'm going to be going on a national book tour. So I might be in your city. I'm really excited for that. Yay.
Wow, amazing.
I'm really, really excited for that. The crazy thing about it is they won't tell me where I'm going until book sales have gotten to a certain point. When we're like a few weeks out from the book's launch, they'll be like, hey, most of your pre-sale orders came from Arizona, California, New Mexico, Washington, and Canada. So like that's where you're going. So I don't know, and I won't know until right before. So if you are interested in having me come to where you are, make sure you pre-order the book. Make sure your friends pre-order the book, because the more books that come from any general location, the more likely it is that I will get to come and hug you in person.
I love that. Okay, this is great to know. So we'll make sure we have these links in the description below so everyone can purchase their copy. And I know I'm very excited to read this personally because I like the way that you're putting this about how can we navigate, how can we transverse, how can we understand this, how can we see and embrace these parts of self with love and adoration. And yeah, I'm excited. Really
This
beautiful
book really
perspective.
is, it's all about love. That's what it is at the end of the day. And with the things that I've seen when I tap into people's past lives or life between lives or their childhoods, the message is always clear that it's about love. And if we can find our way back to love, our souls grow and expand, and we just experience the most abundance possible. So love is everything.
So beautifully put, Danielle. So beautifully put. So, how can people contact you, and do you have any final things to say here today?
Well, you can contact me on my website, TikTok, or Instagram. Everything's always at I am Danielle Massi. So I am Danielle Massi. And if you want to message me on there, I'm super active, definitely in Instagram DMs for sure. Though I have a bigger following on TikTok. So wherever you feel like you like to play and have fun, that's where you can come and find me. And final thoughts are, if you're someone who's listening to this and you want to have another version of yourself come through, like if you feel like you're destined for something more, don't shy away from your shadow work, because that's where the answer is. When you can go into those dark spaces and love them completely, love everything about who you are, that's going to shine so bright. And people are going to feel that energetic shift. They're going to want to be near you. And that's where that ripple effect of being able to touch people is going to come from.
Well, cheers to the shadow work revolution and really the groundwork that you've been laying for years, and it's about to come to fruition in book form in just a couple of weeks. And I'm just so excited for you and so grateful that we got to meet each other and hug in person, and that is how we met.
Yes, we did. Thank you so much again for having me on.
You are so welcome.